Good morning. Today is Sunday, September 28th, 2025, and this is the weekly Bitcoin price forecast, looking at where Bitcoin went in the last week and where it could potentially go in the future. So last week I said I thought we'd end on a more positive note in September, and that just does not seem to be the case. Looking back on it historically, September is generally the worst month for Bitcoin if we look at the past 15 years or so. And it is proving that it may be there. So I think we're still in positive. Right now we're up about 1% on the month from where we started at the beginning of September, but overall it has been a relatively down month from where it did start. So this last week was pretty brutal on it, dropping from about 115 down to 111, which relatively is not bad. You know, it's a $4,000 drop when you're at 100,000. That's like 4%. So not crazy in terms of Bitcoin, but still we're at kind of this area of support now to where I don't think it'll really go much lower. It tried to break lower, but it just couldn't. It went down to, I want to say somewhere around like 108 ish for a brief second. And then, it's kind of resting right now around 109. If we're looking at the monthly chart, but we see like as it continues to go down, it starts to run into all this traffic. Starts to run into this traffic that it had in the past. So it's going to be a lot harder for it to push down below there, especially once you get down to areas like about 100,000, because at that point it is a huge psychological level. People really aren't going to let it drop too far below that. And then furthermore, if we start looking at the moving averages, right? So this is your 21-month moving average. We're at 84 right now. And your what is this 50-month moving average is 61. We see like even when we had this huge down drop into February and the beginning of the year, it didn't even get below the 21-month moving average. So for it to come all the way down here, I think would be I just don't see that being realistic. But again, like I'm saying, this is going to be the area that we're going to talk about right now. So anywhere between 100,000 and 107, like this is a huge zone right here. In the past I talked about price not really getting below 108, and that seems to still be the case here. Just a lot of support in this area, just to not allow price to get down there. So I think on the monthly chart we're still good. Again, September is one of the worst month. It is the worst month for Bitcoin historically. If you look at the previous years. But we'll take a look at that on another chart. So that's the monthly chart. Let's move on to the weekly chart and see what we get. So overall, like I said, we had two up weeks at the start of September, and then this kind of doji candle didn't really go anywhere, and then just an absolute drop. But we see what it did really. This white line again is your 21-week moving average. It just came down to the 21-week moving average. And we see in the past it's bounced off of there, and it held here. It couldn't do there. It bounced off. Couldn't do it again. Bounced off. Well, we haven't seen it bounce off just yet, but what I am seeing, like I said, is there's quite a bit of support in this area from your previous all-time highs to somewhere in here to kind of down here to where you had a support zone right here before it bounced up to the upside. So this is really just a retest. This is a retest before you get to a new level. So what I see here is we had if we start here and this is your low, we had a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. And if it breaks below here, then you could potentially make a lower low. We don't know just yet, but I do think we'll kind of hold up here. But you have the potential to make another higher high here at 125. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out. But for right now, we are in a downtrend. Overall on the weekly chart, we're in an uptrend. Overall on the monthly chart, we're in an uptrend. Daily chart, we're also in an uptrend. We're well above the major moving averages at this point. But we got to be objective here as we speak. So a couple lines here that we look at. I will go ahead and delete this one because that did not hold. That broke. That trend line broke. I don't know let's look here. So I kind of talked about like this orange line was kind of an area of support that I was referencing. It looks like a lower time frame that I was actually doing it. So let's actually move that down here. We'll move that down here and say that this is the area of support that we have. Again, you have your bounce. You came back down. It paused for a little bit here, then shot up. Let's zoom out. And then you had this area right here. So we'll actually get more clarity down the daily chart. But again, 21-week moving average. We're still inside this channel. We actually almost tried to attempt to touch the top of this channel, couldn't do it. Came back down one more time to retest, and I keep saying we keep touching this line. We keep testing this white line that this escape velocity line, as I call it, that marked out the previous tops. So you have a touch here, touch here, touch here, and now we've actually gotten above the line, and this is a retest to where we're not really breaking below it. So what are we at? We're at 111 right now. Yeah, that's pretty much as I need to talk about on here. We're actually below the short-term holder realized price, which again, it's not like we're super below there. But this is starting to be an area of confluence. And when I say confluence, I mean that there are a lot of areas of support and or resistance that are lining up in one space. I'm using a new recorder today, guys, and it's not liking me. My laptop's in the shop, so I'm using a different laptop today. Okay, so this is your daily charts. I'm looking at the crosses and the moving averages. So the 200-day moving average this is a big one. This is sitting right here. So something going below 106 at this point, it seems to be very unlikely. Because again, this is a huge moving average, one that we have not touched since April of this year. And again, April was a huge kind of downswing. So we bounced off again. To see another touch, you'll probably see another bounce off there. If we start breaking well below that, I mean, again, you still have the 100 level, which is below there. So that's another thing to hold it up. And you have the bottom of this trend line. So lowest that you really could reasonably go at this point is 96K. But even that's a huge stretch because you have to break below so much more to get there. And if we extend this channel, we see that this also meets at 100,000 too. So once you get to the bottom of the channel, that's a bounce off area as well. So what I'm saying is going below 100,000 is not, in my mind, super realistic unless you just have some huge scale event, which in that case, I mean, Bitcoin tends to perform well in large macroeconomic events from what I've seen. So let's take a look at the daily chart and define this support area a little bit more. So you can probably take it down here. And that's probably the span of it. If we take that here and call this support and resistance, so bounce off, that's resistance here, broke through the resistance. We see this pause here, came above, bounced off here one time, bounced off again, and then it's pausing once more. And now you have, like I said, you have the moving averages below it and everything like that. So short-term holder realized price, which kind of sucks price back up in that way. Escape velocity line, which I've been referencing, and we're going to keep referencing until it proves to be invalid. But up to this point, it has not. And so we'll see how that works. So let's go down once more to the 4-hour chart. 4-hour chart, we are in a downtrend because we're below the 200 moving average, the 50 moving average, and the 21 moving average. This is my metric. You can choose any moving averages that you want, but these are just the ones that I consistently use. And let's take a look here. So yeah, we've come down to the support zone, and actually what we're doing is retesting the top of this channel. So it's just a lot of confluence right here that gives me confidence that, hey, we're probably going to head back up pretty soon. Especially now that we have had rate cuts. Rate cuts happened this Wednesday. So really, ever since the rate cuts happened, it's been kind of a sell-off. But as the money printers start to hum and start to power up, I think we will see a lot more levity in this market. The next interest rate decision is going to be late October. So about a month from now, and then not again until I think about December 10th or December 9th or something like that. There'll be 2 more decisions at the end of this year, and they're expecting 2 more cuts at this point, or at least 50 basis points more. So we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, once we start breaking above 113 again, that'll tell me that, all right, well, we're back in at least a short-term uptrend. Daily, we're still in technically now that these have crossed, like I call it a short-term downtrend on the daily chart. But again, you start breaking back above, what is this, 113 once again, and you are back into an uptrend territory. So we'll see. 113 is your number. Right now we're at 109. So we'll see. Like I said, a lot of support, a lot of confluence in that area. So let's look at the news this week, economic news. So this is going to be a lot of labor-intensive news. So JOLTS job opening on Tuesday at 9 a.m. So we'll see what the job market looks like. Right now, they're saying it'll be about the same as last month. Probably end up being a little bit lower at this point, just because I mean they've been consistently lower on the job news. ADP employment change, they're projecting that to be the same. ISM manufacturing producers manufacturing index. So I mean that's looking like it's the same, but it's below 50, so that's considered contracting. So that's the manufacturing PMI, and then you have the services down here. They say services are expanding at this point. Unemployment rate expected to stay the same. Non-farm employment. I mean, you almost can't give this number any credence because they've had to revise it so much. They're saying it should jump quite a bit. I mean, it was abysmal last month at 22K, up to 51K is what they're looking at. And then average hourly earnings, they're saying that'll stay the same. So again, the first week of the month is very labor intensive. A lot of the labor news from the previous month ends up coming out, and they just show it in that manner. So we'll see how that ends up turning out. So yeah, a lot of news on the horizon here, so that we'll be able to see. A couple things I'll look at is on the on chain, and actually let's look at one more thing first. I talked about September being the worst month for Bitcoin, and I mean you see that proves to be true. So this is let's see. So I'm looking at the average, right? So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, all the way through September. Um, it's looking like January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September is your worst month on average at -3%. But the rest of the year are they average your best months really. So you have a 25%, 36%, 10% in October, November, December. So definitely good times ahead if we're talking about seasonality. The beginning of the year is kind of average. You have a pretty good month in April generally, which I think we saw this year as well. April, May, June, and then July. But yeah, overall, my point here is that right now, I mean, even if you look at the total returns, the total returns for September, if we just look at, hey, you only held Bitcoin in the month of September historically, you're down 58%. But as opposed to if you held in the months like I don't know, was this April, or if you did something like October, and you only held in October and November, hey, you're up 500% historically. Um, so it's good. This is pretty cool just to see like how Bitcoin trends. But what I'm saying is we're headed into the better part of the year. We're headed into the Q4, and that is generally the best part of the year for Bitcoin and crypto as a whole. Generally, it is kind of the cycle top two, but I have a theory that the 4 year cycle is kind of dead at this point. But we'll see how that goes. After this week's drop, I mean, last week we were kind of neutral, but now we're down to the fear territory, 37%. Not huge fear, but we're not extreme fear or anything, but just like, okay, people are kind of cautious at this point. This is a time that you should, I mean, in my opinion, it's a good time to buy. It's always a good time to buy Bitcoin because realistically, it's just going to keep on going up as time goes by. Whether or not it's flat right now is irrelevant, but the overall trend is up and has been for 15 years, and you just got to follow that macro trend, really. One thing I did want to look at was the Bitcoin addresses with a certain amount of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin averages. Okay, let's. I don't know if I can do the 0.01. That might be a zero point 0.1. Yeah. Okay. So the lower you go, the more kind of retail it is. The more kind of average Joe Blow who's holding Bitcoin. So what I see is from the bottom here, you had a huge run up into really when they did ETFs. So zero point zero 0.01 Bitcoin, which at this point is 1/100th of a Bitcoin, so about $10,000 ish. Or is that $1,000? I think about $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. And yeah, that ran up consistently, and we see it's kind of flatlined now. So what that tells me is that now it's not as many new kind of small players entering the space, and has not been since the ETFs kind of released. And not as many new small players coming into the space, but it's a bit larger. So let's go one step up at point one Bitcoin. Um, you see that did the same thing in January. So ever since the ETFs came out, it has been less and less of a retail game. And more people, hey, okay, I'm just going to buy the ETF. So they're not worried as much about buying the physical Bitcoin anywhere. More addresses. So zero point 0.1 Bitcoin is about $10,000, 11,000 at this point. With Bitcoin being at about 110, and we see this is just kind of flatline. It was up and up and up and up and up until right around when the ETS released in January of 2024, and then it just went flatline. Next one, the trend, one Bitcoin. Who has one Bitcoin? We see that flatlined as well. So that actually flatlined a little bit earlier. So that pretty much kind of, small ramp up. People were kind of accumulating, but really kind of flatlined and start downtrending in January 2024. The next one is 10 Bitcoin, 10 BTC. This has really kind of been flatlined since 2017. So, I mean, this is kind of like your mid range. So, 10 Bitcoin at this point is roughly $1 million. Addresses with $1 million. This is flatlined, and we see we're still literally in the same place that we were in 2017. Maybe just a little higher. So, October 2017, like that was about 150,000 addresses, and we're still at 150,000 addresses today. So, people with a million Bitcoin, that's stayed stagnant for years and years. The interesting one's about to come up now. So what this is showing is who is adopting. So the average Joe Blow doesn't have $1 million, but people who have, I mean, it's $10 million. So this is now increasing. So this has been, that was flat since 2018, but now we see since actually this is around election season. Since the election, this really took off. People addresses with $10 million worth of Bitcoin, roughly 100 Bitcoin. That's taken off and that's gone to new heights, and that's largely become around the acceptance of Bitcoin in the political sphere and the corporate sphere. And we see starting off in December and through inauguration, that has really just continued on through this year. So we see a lot of corporate and large body accumulation as opposed to small players. So it's becoming a bigger and bigger game. So let me see, 10,000 Bitcoin. That's kind of stayed the same. So, I'm sorry, 1,000 Bitcoin. That is 10 million. Is that 10 million or 100 million? I think it might be 100 million at this point. So that stayed flat since 2019. That hasn't really moved. 100 million Bitcoin. These are old players. If you have 1,000 Bitcoin, that means you were probably an early player and you got in pretty early. The last one to look at is the people with 10,000 Bitcoin. And if you have 10,000 Bitcoin, you are greater than 10,000 Bitcoin. You are absolutely one of those players who was around in the early days of Bitcoin. There are no people at this point who just, I'm just going to casually get 10,000 Bitcoin. It's just, purchases of that size and accumulation of that size, it just doesn't really exist as much. So we see what's happened, and part of the reason that prices kind of stayed down is these people have been selling. These people have been, and again, it's not a ton of people. It's 120 down to 85. So I mean, you got to pay attention to what the chart is, but this is decreased by quite a bit. So a lot of these people with a large amount of Bitcoin have started selling off. They started selling off at this point in one way or another, and that is a way that price has kind of maintained down. We see this is the most steep drop of any of the charts that we had. So that once this one starts to flatline, you can really start to go up once again, and we kind of see that here to where it's like, all right, well, hey, they were accumulating here, they were selling off here as we kind of went to the top, but we'll just kind of see how that ends up going. But as we can see, really this entire cycle has been like, these large players kind of rotating out of their huge bags of Bitcoin. So I mean, at this point, if you have 10,000 Bitcoin, that is, what is that? That's 10,000 times 100,000. 10,000 times 100,000. That's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. That's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. That's a lot of Bitcoin at this point. So, that's pretty much all I got. Really just following the patterns and trends and trying to be as objective as possible. Paying attention to the key levels and then just going on from week to week. So, again, this has been Chris Talks Crypto. Check out crypto-based resources on christalkscrypto.com, and I will see y'all on the moon. Take care. Bye-bye.